Okay, anyone else? Felicia. Mike, please.
All right, I thought it was much better, and I love the charts and graphs and the sidebars. I want more charts and graphs and sidebars. I mean, because it helps paint the picture a lot better, and so I'll have suggestions for that. The one thing that I love sort of shaking my head, and maybe I just missed something you explained, there are a bunch of recommendations that I know I've seen over time that relate to these issues, and I didn't see any reference to things like the ballast regulations that I know the feds do. The state must have them. Fish access, dam removal or fish. There's all kinds of things that fish need that are a whole suite of things. I think this goes further to pull some of that together than what we had before, but there's still just big recommendations I know that are out there that are missing.
Ballast recommendations in the water quality chapter, I think.
I think the ballast management issues would be addressed in the Fish and Game's non-native invasive species criteria, which are a program which is cited here.
We cite, I feel like there's like a paragraph about, efforts need to happen, but there's a whole picture there and a story of things.
And then again, that set of actions includes everything from aquarium, like pet stores to ballast management.
Maybe give me more recommendations than you have here, because again, I'm giving you as a council member my reaction to how this reads, and it reads weak. And you're doing it pragmatically to think about, well, we can't list them all, so we're not going to list any of them. And what I'm saying is that doesn't paint a picture that you've even thought about it, right. And you have. So you have to display that.
And I would say when I was called upon to edit this, I noticed that it did not draw upon the huge amount of literature that's available, both about migratory birds and salmon and steelhead in the watershed. But I'm also reluctant to try to digest that, and that was part of why we ended up where we ended up.
Yeah, and I recognize that trying to make it read as one document, I actually think you were right to condense. Now you've got to go back and expand a little more. You were absolutely right to do this first. Now let it spring back a little bit.
All right. Other comments, questions, members? All right. Joe, on this chapter, I think we've got wrestling with the performance measures approach and language and so on as one. Other things that council members have mentioned.
I just wanted to respond to one of the suggestions we've had, and we've heard both sides of this issue, and it was the primary recommendation of the Department of Fish and Game, and that was that in that in ERP3 on page 148 that we not constrain this policy, which requires protection of opportunities to restore habitat, to the areas that are depicted in this map. And I know when I go out and talk with the counties in the Delta, or when I talk to the Delta Protection Commission, this is one of the revisions to the plan that they're most grateful for. Because as this policy was developed previously, it applied to the entire Delta, including many areas that have great agricultural productive possibilities or flood control possibilities or all kinds of other things that if you had to protect the restoration opportunity, there'd be a great suite of activities that would potentially be restricted. So I would say that of the advice that we've heard, that's one thing that I'm quite reluctant to recommend. It would be if people have suggestions of additional areas that would be high priority to restore, that would be great to hear. I know we've identified 5 areas, and I've always been sort of surprised that it was just these 5 myself, is that someone who fishes down there and kind of knows the Delta, I was sort of going, hey, where are some of the others? But I was told somewhere along the line, somebody said, give us the top 5, and so we have 5, and maybe there's 6, or maybe there's 7.
Okay, let's hear from Don, then from Carl. Please.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that to kind of echo what Dan said, that this has been a big deal, and I understand certainly where Fish and Game and others come from. But, if you just say, take the map and wherever we need to go, and that's not what you're saying, but it needs to obviously relate to science and to, some practical applications of restoration elements. But as we went through the economic sustainability plan, certainly hearing from local perspectives, and with the overlays of habitat conservation plans, of what obviously what BDCP has proposed, lands that are already owned and acquired by whether it's public entities or private agencies that do conservation and restoration, And then you have these areas as opportunities. Even the map on 148 or 149, that's pretty good size. Just because it's got red hash marks and you've got a lot of areas that doesn't have that on there, that's still a lot of areas. Now, they may not be the most opportune as it evolves. There's opportunity to revisit it, but I think there needs to be some settlement around this, because otherwise it leaves those, particularly in the private sector, but in the public sector as well, with great angst about what's going to happen with my farm, with my community, with the tax base, with infrastructure improvements, a whole host of things. And I think you understand that, Carl. But if you just give the map or this palette that has more areas in color for restoration opportunities than it is for the current pursuits or anticipated pursuits, I think it really puts a real cloud over the ability to work with those folks on the ground and implementing things that are going to be good to meet the co-equal goals, but also to integrate, I think, as Mr. Machado said earlier, as that links with some of the other things that are important for everyday life in the Delta, whether you're creatures or endangered species or humans. And so I think that you really, that there needs to be some attention paid to focused areas versus kind of a more shotgun approach.
Well, I think we can be more focused. In actuality, the crosshatched areas, really overemphasize what you would want to do. When you put the context of the amount of acres that people talk about, there's more, there's probably 2 or 3 times much in those cross-hatched areas as would ever be considered. So, but there are some areas, particularly eastern Contra Costa County, that provide opportunities that tie in with their NCCP and or could tie in with proposals that have come from the South Delta folks relative to Old River and an isolated Old River corridor or Eco Crescent and that kind of thing that I think didn't get included here, haven't been really included in BDCP, but I think the more we think about them and the more kind of discussions go, that's where it might be more practical than what is actually shown. So
I guess maybe the natural question to that would be to follow on then. So there is the ability to revisit and to reevaluate, and I would say I assume to change, maps. I mean, again, this is for purposes, again, not just a snapshot in time. It represents obviously a good deal of work, a culmination. But you took a point in time where whether you put a map together, you did a plan, or some sort of a study. And so I guess to your point, is there not the ability, and maybe that poses to Dan or Joe, is there not the ability to revisit that if there's a refinement in some of the areas that have here too been identified?
I have anticipated that one of the more frequent kinds of revisions to the Delta Plan that would occur would be refinements in these sorts of maps, whether they're depicting restoration areas or flood control projects or, the boundaries of areas that want to be protected by levees. As better information comes available, we can focus our attention. Again, here we're trying to do is protect an opportunity. Over time, we're going to realize better and better what that opportunity is, and we can be more precise about what we're teeing up. But certainly, if we don't have to create problems for folks now with a policy that says, hey, you've got to be more careful than maybe you need to be because we really know where restoration is.
If I could see alternative language that you are deliberately not talking about so that I could know what precisely you are talking about, I would be happier than. So why don't tomorrow you and Mr. Wilcox talk about whether there should be or should not be a further discussion with alternate language at least in front of us.
Well, we'll bring it back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the underlying concern is that in the appendix that supports the recommendation, it talks about 100% of things being done, and that's not the way it should be characterized.
Okay.
So.
Joe, just a last question. Should I get a motion on the Delta flow charts, outflow, inflow, exports? If you want me to, I will.
I don't think so.
Okay, that means they'll be in the plan?
That means we'll put them in the plan.
Got it. Thank you.
I am assuming that's council direction, and we'll put it on our list of council direction.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for... for you, it's 7 a.m. You're buying breakfast? No, we're starting at 9 o'clock, and thank you very much for coming back. Thank you.